Ladies and gentlemen, today we have 20 minutes for some question and answers. Who would you like to pose a question to? We've had people from yesterday and people from today. We've got 20 minutes.
This will be not a question, but extra information. To creation of this Katyn massacre investigation commission, instrumental was not only the war in Korea, of course, that was the background, but the action of Polonia. That's information which we should take into account, that how coordinated action can cause or change the course of events. And here we have to remind that Polish-American Congress, and especially President Rosmarek, was extremely important person to lead to this. Thank you so much.
By the way, I was informed that we have this movie documentary clip that we're going to show, okay, about Katyn. Here we go.
Forests can hold many secrets, both terrible and dark, hidden in the whispering trees, echoing in the ground. Secrets, lies, screams, gunshots, and truth. This is the tale of a half-century of deceit, but also courage. The untold story of the Katyn massacre, a brutal murder of thousands of Polish prisoners of war. In the spring of 1940, around 22,000 Polish military and civilian elites were executed in the shadows of the Katyn forest. A terrible history narrated by the witnesses who were kept silent for decades. Encounter with Katyn by Professor Tadeusz Wolsza.
All right, well, I was told that the movie is a trailer of a book that is being sold over there on the side, so if you'd like to pick up a copy, this is a book that apparently Professor Wolsza wrote, and obviously quite an expert on that subject. Do we have any additional questions? Yes, sir.
My question is for the historians, and I've read a lot of literature and look at the map of Poland before the war and after the war, and it came to me, why isn't there a third map of Poland during the war? And that would clear up a lot of confusion for people who want to go through the history quickly, because it is confusing when a lot of those issues show up about the land. So if there wasn't any Poland during the wartime that Poland was under the control of, so why don't the history books have 3 different maps, before, during, and after the war?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I have a few footnotes to the presentations of yesterday. First, to the brilliant paper on the fate of Polish rabbits. As a manager of Teatr Współczesny, contemporary theater in Wrocław, I was general manager of this theater. I had an actress, Irena Rębiszewska, who was one of these rabbits. So I am indirectly also a witness to this terrible story. Also, I can say that my cousin, Irena Reklewska, was also one of these rabbits. This leads me to a short but more general thought. From my generation and older people, I think that every Pole had this personal encounter. Those who survived had this personal encounter, somebody from family, their milieu, their relatives, who would be a hero of our conference. I can add a footnote to one of these interesting presentations on German crimes. One of my cousins, Stanisław Medwecki, was one of the pilots of this first Polish squadron who was raised near Krakow to fight the upcoming German bombers. He was killed in this action. A hero, Stanisław Medwecki. Also, in Ravensbrück, I mentioned an actress, Rysiówna. She was one of those actors who performed in concentration camps, Stalags, Oflags, and elsewhere. But the paper did not mention probably the most prominent prisoner of Ravensbrück, Karolina Lanskorońska. Karolina Lanskorońska, a few words about her. They are, I think, important. Aristocratic family, the first woman professor of the history of arts at Polish University Jana Kazimierza Uniwersytet in Lwów. During the war, as Jadwiga Domańska, sworn member of Home Army. She was involved in providing food for prisoners in many prisons all around general government. Imprisoned by Gestapo, I will not tell the whole story, sent to Ravensbrück. And in Ravensbrück, there is an account of her performance. For me, a theater person, this is very moving. There is a group of Greek girls sentenced to death just before execution. And Karolina Lanskorońska, this great scholar, somehow was able to stand in front of them and recites for them Iliad in Greek. And they go for the execution. Thank you very much.
We have one more question.
Hi. The Katyn murders, to me, is well known, and it seems to me the most known now in the Western world. I had a question, but it seems to me that it may be overshadowing the atrocities that may have occurred towards perhaps the Polish rank and file POWs. Can somebody just briefly comment on what happened to the rank and file POWs? Because I read somewhere that there may have been instances where, for example, thousands of Polish rank and file soldiers were also murdered. In fact, may have even been put on barges in the freezing waters of and then those barges were
Sunk.
were sunk. Could somebody just briefly comment on that? Because I think the Canton murder at this point seems to be the only atrocity towards the POWs that people know about, and there's a belief that that may be the only, when I think it's the tip of the iceberg.
Is Professor Volsha around to answer that? Okay, thank you. Did you hear the question?
Tak. Jeśli chodzi o pytanie na temat losów polskich jeńców wojennych w sowieckiej niewoli, to w zasadzie dysponujemy taką większą wiedzę dotyczącą tych, którzy dostali się do najważniejszych obozów. Tych obozów było więcej oczywiście niż 3, o których ja mówiłem, było ich kilkanaście. Jeńcy wojenni praktycznie rzecz biorąc byli przetrzymywani w warunkach obozowych, czyli krótko mówiąc były to obozy, to były baraki odrutowane drutem kolczastym przy bardzo skromnym wyżywieniu, przy bardzo takim niehigienicznych warunkach bytowych. Byli narażeni nie tylko na głód, ale zimno oraz choroby.
So the question, as far as I remember, was about the prisoners of war and their fate under the Soviets. So there were more than 3 camps where the prisoners of war were kept. Actually, I mentioned just 3 camps, but there were more than 10 of those. And the prisoners of war were kept in the camp conditions, of course, with the barracks, barbed wires, with very poor food, very non-hygienical conditions, and they were always hungry and cold. These were the conditions of how they were kept.
Tysiące polskich jeńców wojennych była również zmuszana do pracy niewolniczej w Związku Sowieckim, na przykład przy budowie szlaków komunikacyjnych. I wtedy świadczyli taką pracę niewolniczą w identycznych warunkach, czyli tak samo w takich warunkach obozowych.
Thousands of those prisoners of war were treated as slaves, and they were put to work to build communication routes, for instance. And in those instances, they had the same inhumanly conditions as in those camps.
Natomiast najgorsze to, co oprócz oczywiście zbrodni katyńskiej, o której już mówiłem, i o śmierci ponad 21,5 tysiąca Polaków, najgorszym już po zbrodni katyńskiej wydarzeniem był moment, kiedy Niemcy dokonały agresji na Związek Sowiecki.
And the worst event that took place after the Katyn massacre, where more than 21,500 Poles died, was where the Germans invaded the Soviet Union.
I wtedy rozpoczęła się masowa ewakuacja więzień na terenie Związku Sowieckiego, zwłaszcza na terenie tych ziem, które zostały wcielone do sowieckiej strefy, i praktycznie rzecz biorąc przy tej ewakuacji dokonywano też zbrodni na masową skalę.
And then what happened was the mass evacuations of the prisons in the territory and the zone of influence of the Soviet Union, and where those prisons were evacuated, the people were killed on the mass scale too.
Kiedy Niemcy na przykład wkroczyli do Lwowa albo do innych polskich miast, to po otwarciu bram więzień, zakładów karnych mogli zobaczyć dziesiątki zamordowanych polskich obywateli różnych zawodów, różnej rangi, różnego znaczenia, których Sowieci w ostatniej chwili jeszcze zdążyli wymordować, nie ewakuując ich na wschód.
And when the Germans entered Lwów and other Polish cities, and when they opened the gates of the prisons, they could see tens of murdered Polish citizens of different professions, of different ranks, and these were the people that unfortunately the Soviets killed in the last moment because they were unable to evacuate those prisons towards the east, so they just killed the prisoners.
Tym wszystkim zbrodniom, o których już mówiliśmy tu, Towarzyszyły również deportacje zwykłych polskich obywateli na wschód. W 1940-1941 roku były 4 deportacje na masową skalę. W lutym, w kwietniu i czerwcu 1940 roku i w czerwcu 1941 roku.
Apart from those atrocities I mentioned, there was also a mass deportation of the Poles to the east that took place actually in 4 instances in 1940 and 1941, which is February, April and June 1940 and then June 1941.
I w świetle różnych obliczeń szacuje się, że wywieziono wówczas w różne dalekie strony Związku Sowieckiego, ja tak przynajmniej uważam, nie mniej niż 1 200 000 Polaków. Nie mniej, a być może było ich i więcej.
In the light of all the calculations that have been made, and in my personal opinion, very far in the deep Soviet Union, I think that more than 1,200,000 of people were deported. Not less than that, and I believe there were many more.
W dużej części byli to ludzie skazani na zagładę, bo oni nie byli przystosowani do życia w tamtych warunkach, bo to byli ludzie starsi, to były kobiety, dzieci i praktycznie rzecz biorąc wcześniej żyli w innych warunkach. Tam daleko na wschodzie przy wysokich temperaturach, zarówno jeśli chodzi o mróz, jak i ciepło oraz przy słabym wyżywieniu i chorobach, śmiertelność była wprost nieprawdopodobna.
And these people were people who were moved to those areas, but they were actually doomed to die because they were not prepared to live in those conditions. Because the people who were moved to all those very distant places were elderly people, were women, were children that didn't used to live in conditions like that. So if you go very far east, you have either very high temperatures or very, very low temperatures. If there's scarcity of food, the death rate, the death toll was just impressive.
Wczoraj Państwo oglądaliście taki film indyjski, tu Pani prezentowała, to była właśnie historia tych wywiezionych polskich dzieci, które były sierotami i nagle znalazły schronienie w Indiach. Gdyby nie to, najprawdopodobniej nigdy by już nie powrócili do swojej ojczyzny.
Yesterday you had the possibility to see an Indian movie, I believe here, and that was about the history of the Polish children who were the orphans, and but for that event they would possibly die.
Thank you. Tu Pan ma pytanie. Proszę.
Jako teorie są, że generał Anders nie został zamordowany przez Stalin?
What are the theories that General Anders was not killed by Stalin?
Generał Anders do sowieckiej niewoli dostał się we wrześniu 1939 roku. Był ranny tam gdzieś w okolicach Lwowa.
So
We wrześniu 1939 roku.
General Anders was enslaved in September of 1939 and he was moved somewhere around Lwów.
Kiedy Sowieci się zorientowali, kto jest ich jeńcem, natychmiast został przewieziony do Związku Sowieckiego, do więzienia na Łubiance i tam był poddany różnego rodzaju przesłuchaniom. Rosjanie na razie zachowali go przy życiu, bo to był taki ważny jeniec wojenny, który mógł w przyszłości być przydatny do różnych rzeczy.
So when the Soviets realized who was this prisoner of war, they decided to move him to the Lubyanka prison and they prepared him for interrogations. They decided not to kill him because he was a very, very important prisoner of war that could be used for purpose.
Proszę zwrócić uwagę, że bardzo często Rosjanie zachowywali przy życiu różnych specjalistów, oficerów, bo w przyszłości chcieli ich wykorzystać do własnych celów i nie jest wykluczone, że to darowanie życia generałowi Andersowi przez jakiś czas było właśnie obliczone w tym kierunku. I dlatego można powiedzieć, był na Łubiance w więzieniu, ale czuł się bezpiecznie, nie groziła mu przynajmniej przez jakiś czas kara śmierci.
So the Russians decided to keep alive different people, like specialists, officers, just for their own purposes, not because they wanted to keep these people alive. And that's why General Anders, he got his life back. He was moved to the Lubyanka prison, but he felt he was safe there. he felt nobody was going to kill him because he was too important.
A potem był Układ Sikorski-Majski w lipcu 1941 roku po agresji Niemiec na Związek Sowiecki i generał Anders stał się nagle dowódcą Wojska Polskiego w Związku Sowieckim, odtwarzał Wojsko Polskie na terytorium Związku Sowieckiego. Stał się sojusznikiem Związku Sowieckiego. Tak się ta historia dla niego szczęśliwie ułożyła, że nagle z jeńca był jedną z ważniejszych postaci. Oczywiście w Związku Sowieckim realizował swoją własną politykę. On nie podporządkował się decyzjom Stalina, ale dążył do tego, żeby, przyświecała mu myśl, żeby jak największą liczbę Polaków uratować w Związku Sowieckim. Tych niewinnych ludzi, którzy zostali wywiezieni w ramach deportacji, czyli nie tylko odtworzenie Wojska Polskiego, ale również uratowanie tych wszystkich cywilów, w tym dzieci i kobiet.
So, as part of the Sikorski-Majski Pact in July 1941, General Anders decided to recover the Polish military forces in the Soviet Union. And from the prisoner of war, he just became an ally of the Soviet Union. And he decided to do his own policy there. He decided not to undergo the instructions of Stalin. He decided he would do his thing as far as he could. So first of all, he decided to recreate the Polish army, and secondly, he decided to save as many Poles as possible, those who were deported. First of all, like civilians, children, those people who could not help themselves.
Dziękuję.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Volosha.